I don't know, John. Life is strange, man. And I figure, pick a set of morals, pick a destination, paint a vision. Don't be afraid to revise it from time to time, but follow it, man. Because if you're not, you're full of shit.
If you ever wanted to do, your show here, I think, we could do that play in conjunction. We could both, we could do it kind of back to back.
That would be.
I think it'd be really cool.
Really cool, and I'd be honored to work in the same venue, so to speak, with you. I mean, you've been
me too,
super
brother.
successful, man.
Oh, thanks,
and,
man.
Like I told you earlier, I've given you the title of the guy that's in every movie that's ever been made now. That used to be Robert Patrick's title, but it's you now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, did you feel like one role pushed you over the top? And what was that role? Now I'm doing the interviewing now.
Yeah, hey, man, it can be whatever it can be. George, I think... I don't know. I think for me, we were talking about your experience over in Spain that you just had. There's so many times I think in the beginning of my career. First of all, the beginning is all just clawing and scraping and crying in your pillow because it's never gonna fucking happen. Why was I born with this big fucking nose? Why my ears look like goddamn Dumbo the elephant and shit? But
that's part of the qualities that make you stand out.
Well, look, man, I think I think
I'm not saying you got big ears.
No, man, don't worry. No, it's not that. It's just that I think that there's a long time where you just, for me, where it was a real struggle and it wouldn't look like it was gonna happen. And the truth is, I'm just as hungry now as I was then.
And I think that's part of your success.
I would imagine for all of us. I think like hunger and drive and being humble, and I eventually when we're gonna actually get into this interview and talk about you is which I want to tell. But like I'm sure you probably had a lot of that same thing.
Sure,
but as I think with this thing, because you're an entertainer as well. I think there's this misconception that there's going to be this one thing that's going to break you through, and every time I felt, oh man, this one audition, like it all comes down to this, like I got to get this, or oh now I got this and this is going to break me through. It never really happens. I think it's much more about your work ethic and who you are while you're working and what you stand for, and not compromising, not changing who you are. And over time, I think people, both the audience, but also your peers and your colleagues say, that motherfucker works hard. He shows up. He brings the best out of everybody. He doesn't complain. He doesn't, he's always driving to make it better. And so, look, I think everything in my life kind of changed around Walking Dead. But I think a lot of that was also because I really became a new man and I was focused on different things.
Not changing who you are is maybe the most difficult aspect of getting notoriety, whether you're famous or infamous.
That's right.
Not changing who you are and not losing the vision that you have, because you create that vision and you follow it, and sometimes you have to alter it with the times. It's every decade. I have a child from every decade.
Wow.
And each child is different.
I bet.
To the decade.
I bet.
I gauge how the world is changing by how they perceive things.
Wow.
Think back to my daughter, who's a criminal lawyer, got me out of many
She represented
jams.
you.
She got me out of many jams. And I go back to her, she's 51 now.
Wow.
To my youngest, 19, and he has a completely different perspective of things. But it seems to be circling back. My oldest daughter's somewhat conservative. My other two children, more liberal, and my youngest is circling back more conservative. I had a really great lawyer. Barry Tarlow was a criminal lawyer. He's passed away, rated one of the top 10 lawyers in the world. And, he said things pivot back and forth like a pendulum. You know, society does, interests do with people. And I kind of got off track, but
No, but I've heard that exact thing. You know, it's funny. One of the first guys I had on here is a cop from East Baltimore. Grew up in East Baltimore. He's one of the most sort of legendary cops, drug cops and street cops. Been plainclothes guy forever in Baltimore. He's one of these guys. I did a ton of ride-alongs with him, and I was out there on the street with him. He's one of those guys that all the cops kind of look up to and respect, but also all the guys on the street do as well.
Right,
and,
sure.
That's
a difficult position to
fucking
get in.
Exactly. But like he says the same thing about the pendulum, and he talks about specifically with crime and with sort of like, being sort of a liberal agenda on crime, to be tough on crime, and how it goes back and forth. You said something a second ago about, the hardest thing to do is sort of remain staying who you are. And, you're such a fascinating guy to me for so many different reasons. But, I imagine for you that doing that specifically, when we met, I think we met outside the gym.
We did.
For the first time. And I saw you walking and like, I think we had walked by each other a couple of times. We kind of gave each other a head nod. And I was like, I don't know who that guy is, but that's a real, like that guy's no. But there was something about like the way you handled yourself. And then when we got to talking, and I heard, wow, okay, that's one of the most infamous, Hell's Angels of all time. And he ran the Ventura chapter, and he was one of the leaders in the whole organization. And then, and then I heard, you're out of the club now, and
I am.
I can't,
made a lot of people unhappy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've heard that as well. And I imagine like being I really, obviously I want to go through your journey and what you're about, but being yourself, are you the same guy now that you were then? And how have you managed that?
I believe I am the same guy. I'm a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more educated. And, the pivotal point for me was we were becoming the people we rebelled against. And that's just something that I couldn't stay on board for. And
how so specifically?
Well, initially, when I came around the Hells Angels, the Question Mark, the Saint and Slaves, the Galloping Goose, all these different Southern California bike clubs who were initially World War II veterans. That's, the whole Southern California was really the birthplace for the whole outlaw bike scene. And, it's a phenomena that has spread all around the world now. And it was kind of a live and let live attitude. And I think that as people develop money and power, it affected them, and not always in a good way.
What specifically? Because I know you went, you sort of laid down your patch, and you were the longest. You were the longest sort of serving
president,
charter president, right?
In the Hells Angels, yeah.
In
I
the
was
history,
35 years leader of first in Los Angeles, which was a real experience because in the midst of my tenure down there, we got in a war with the Mongols, which was no joke. I mean, it's interesting. People, I was a Marine and, worked for the Department of Defense afterwards. And, people would say, well, did you go to war? And I said, well, I didn't go to war in Vietnam, but I went to war in Southern California.
And look, man, there's nothing here where I want, I'm not after like salacious, like but what?
We're just talking, John.
No, I know, brother. But, I'm just really curious. I'm pretty good friends with Mel Chancey. You know what I mean?
Sure, Mel, yeah.
And but this is a world, man. I grew up in D.C.
Right.
We didn't have. I had no until I kind of came out here. I had no real exposure to this world, have friends in it. I've known guys on all sides of everything.
Sure.
It's a big thing that I'm sure you believe in as well. I judge people only by the content of their character.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of police officers that I consider friends, and I was criticized by a lot of club members, even when I was in good standing and at the peak of my power. A lot of people didn't like the relationship I have, but it was a unique relationship. Back in the 70s and the 80s in Ventura, Ventura Police Department was very small. I knew all the officers. There was an interesting street cop. He worked by himself. His name was Cubic, and he would really expect the Hells Angels to control the street.
Yep.
And they turn their blind eye to a lot of things if it in fact help the community. And the interesting thing about this guy Kubik was he was a Green Beret major, and he lived up in the mountains in Vietnam. And he came down. He probably could have ran for chief of police at some point. He had a illustrious long career, but he never got any rank, and he never had a partner. He was a solo guy, just an old school guy, and I respected him, and he respected us. And, that has changed. You asked me earlier, what has changed? That's one of the things that changed, was respecting somebody just for them.
For them, what they do.
Just what they do.
And that's the thing, I think, with this podcast that we've been trying to do a lot is, I sit down, sometimes active gang members, police on the other side, and I say, who's a guy in your own community that you really respect? Who's somebody in that guy's community that you really respect? Right. Who's somebody in your own community that you think, kind of just talks the talk, doesn't really walk it? Because the truth is, we're all human beings, right. And I think that it's easy to find these lines of respect. You usually laugh at the same shit. We all care about our kids, want our kids to be happy. We right. Playing the cards that we're dealt. And I think you said something else, man. I have so many fucking questions for you, man. But the thing that you said, that this cop specifically in Ventura kind of depended on you guys to keep the police. That's another thing that we sort of keep the peace. Excuse me, or I've lived in Venice for a long time, and I know you have a lot of connections right. to there too. And one thing that sort of happened in the last few years is that the sort of transient community and the homeless community there has kind of run amok, and it's become extraordinarily dangerous down on the beach. And there's as my understanding from living down there, I had a bunch of guys who were involved in that shoreline crip set down there, and right. A big thing that they were doing is really kind of keeping the peace. Those shops down on the beach, right. They were paying draft to shoreline, and that was really, that made it a much safer place.
It's interesting how that works.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know, I've heard a lot of people about the role that the Angels have played around here, and but that's a real thing. I mean, sometimes you need somebody to come in there, and
we had very strict street rules. There was no cooking drugs in Ventura County. We didn't want any drive-by shootings in Ventura County. And we had sit-down meetings with the street gangs on more than one occasion. And it was interesting. The older cops, their attitude was, get it done, keep the community safe any way you can. Right. Some of the younger cops, I had clashes with them because they said it was none of our business and we needed to stay out of it. And I said, well, if we can get the job done where you can't, and the public is safer for it, what's the problem?
And what is the drive? What is the drive of the Angels? You're the president of the chapter. You're like, what, to not have drive-by shootings in the streets of Ventura, or to not be able to not cook drugs. Where is that coming from?
It cuts with a double-edged sword. First of all, public relations is everything. You want the community to stand behind you, because these people are potentially going to be the jurors that judge you if you get yourself into a jam. That was one of the things. And we wanted community support. And, we had more than one trial, so to speak, in the clubhouse with, different factions of street gangs. And they were willing to let us get involved. Can that happen nowadays? I don't know. I don't think so, probably. Mm-hmm. But there was a time when Ventura Hells Angels had held heavy sway on the streets.
But is there a part of it also, like, your kids are there, and you
yeah,
care about
safety,
this community?
It's the children, it's the people within the community trying to run businesses. There was a lot of allegations by one of the district attorneys that we were extorting businesses. We never took a penny from anybody. And there was also allegations that certain police officers, the FBI had made allegations certain police officers were on, my payroll specifically, and that never happened. That they were allegations that never could be proved. But, and back then, an allegation like that made by a law enforcement department, a federal law enforcement agency, held a lot of clout,
Sure.
People. But there's been a lot of things over the years where, now people question certain things. But, these allegations back then ruined some of these guys' careers.
Yeah, I bet.
And it wasn't fair, and it was because certain actions. I had a cop named Butterbean who was just a street cop, and the district attorney wanted him to wire up. They wanted him to come in and trick me with some questions. And, rather than do that, now this is integrity. Rather than do that, the guy retired.
What was that behind? Why did he do that?
Why did he retire?
Yeah, why did he not? Why was he adverse to doing that?
Because I think he was an honorable man. And it boils down to, you were talking earlier about staying on track and specifics. It's just like myself, when I made the decision to leave the club, it took me 2 years. And it's difficult to be at the top of your game and walk away from it because you don't believe in it anymore. And that's basically what happened. I wanted to stay true to myself. I don't want to glorify any of the actions of what I did, Hell's Angels under my tenure, but I don't want to apologize for it either.
There you go.
It was what it was, and
There
it
you
is
go.
what it is.
There you go.
And, I stand behind the things I did. There's some things I did I'm not happy about. Some things in Los Angeles, maybe if I'd been a more tenured leader, I would have been stronger in my opposition to things. But you live and learn, and sometimes those events are catastrophic.
I mean, I've talked to Mel a good bit about the outlaw wars in Chicago, yeah. And
they came from Chicago. The Chicago Outlaws came here to kill me.
What was that about?
Well, I had been negotiating with Taco, the international leaders of the Outlaws, and we had put a moratorium on the violence. There was no more shootings. We were trying to negotiate a settlement. I went to him unannounced. I just showed up.
Where'd you go?
I went. I was in Terre Haute, Indiana, at a prison bike show. And the Hells Angels and the Outlaws in the prison put this bike show on together. And I went there. I was one of the guys from the street that went.
Because in the prisons, the bike gangs, they
don't fight.
You don't fight in prison. You got to. You're
that
in the
was
same
always
car.
my position: is we're not fighting in prison. Why are we fighting on the street?
Right.
Where we have everything we want.
And is the reason you're not fighting in prison is because why is that?
Well, I think because of the confinement. I think out of respect. If you were fighting on a daily basis, they'd shut the prison yard down. I'm sure the other prison gangs would not be happy with you. You've got the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, and the Black Guerrilla family that kind of runs most of the prisons. Started here in California and kind of drifted out. And one of the things, first time I went to prison in 1986, Guy Castellano from San Diego was a very powerful leader in the club back then and remained in the club till he passed away. But I said, when I got there, I was young guy, young leader in the Hells Angels. And I said, who do we need to worry about in here? And he laughed. He goes, nobody. And I said, what do you mean nobody? He goes, we don't fight in prison. I said, we don't fight in prison? He goes, no. He goes, there's Mongols in there, outlaws, banditos. And I said, well, why are we fighting on the street? And he, the guy was just a character. He goes, you think too much, man. Just relax and enjoy it.
So tell me about going to see Taco.
Well, Stairway Harry, who was a former international leader of, you got to love the names, was the former international leader of the Outlaws. He kind of made a political move with me. We were leaving the prison and shook hands. I said, hey, man, it's been a pleasure meeting you, Harry. I said, I've been hearing about you for years. And he goes, hey, I got a question for you. And I said, okay. And he said, and he was very careful how he structured the question. He goes, the 50th anniversary is coming up in Sturgis. And he goes, how do you feel about us going? He didn't say we're going or, he was very structured.
Because normally Outlaws.
Well, they didn't go to that run.
That was a Hells Angels.
That was a Hells Angel Bandito run. And we shared it with the Banditos. They went there first, and they were gracious enough, when we started showing up in numbers, they didn't have a problem with it. But he was very careful. He said, how do you feel about us going? And I said, well, I don't know. I have to think about it. He goes, Taco's right up the street from us, about 2 miles in a motel. And I thought, shit. So I just went up there by myself. And I got to the motel. I walked up. and I see the Outlaws looking at me. There's about 10 of them outside the
And you're
building.
wearing...
I got my colors on,
Yeah.
and I'm, Hell's Angels, George Christie. And they surrounded me. And they go, "What are you doing, man?" And I go, "Is Taco here?" And they go, "Yeah, but what are you doing here?" I go, "I want to talk to Taco." And the one guy that seemed to be in charge said, "Does he know you're coming here?" And I go, "No." And he just goes, "You're a crazy motherfucker." He goes, "Go get Taco." And one of the guys went in and got him. So I'm standing there, I'm surrounded by these guys, and I don't even remember this gentleman's name. We're exchanging some dialogue. And Taco came around the corner, and like Taco's guys stopped. He had complete dominance of those guys. And they all turned to look at Taco. And I looked at him, and I said, "Well, he's smiling." I go, "That's a good sign."
There you go.
And we all kind of started laughing. And Taco just shook his head. He goes, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "Well, I came to talk to you." And the first thing I said to him, I said, "Look," I said, "I don't know about your club, but our club, there are new members, and they don't even know why we're fighting."
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me and smiled. And I said, "Look, Taco, if you were born in California, there's no doubt you would be a Hell's Angel." And I said, "If I was born in Chicago, I know I'd be an outlaw." I go, "We got so much in common, man. What's the problem?" And we just started talking from there. Next time you see Mel,
Yeah.
ask him to tell you about Spike, because Spike's the one that Spike was an ex-Army Ranger, I was told, killed 4 or 5 Hell's Angels back there in a matter of months, and
In Chicago.
yeah, Chicago area, Indiana, Chicago, and he pushed Taco back into the war. Taco called me and told me. He said, "I'm getting a lot of pressure," and there's a speech that Taco gave that one of the informants eventually flipped on Taco, told a reporter. I've got a news article. I should send you I have a book I wrote about it, and I'll get you a copy.
Thank you.
It's really
Thank you.
interesting. But he called me. Taco called me, and it was like just 2 scooter tramps talking one-on-one. There was no politics. There was no agenda. And that's the last time I talked to him, maybe the second to the last time I talked to him. And he basically told me, he said, "Hey, man, I'm getting a lot of political pressure." And he goes, "How about on your end?" And I said, "You think I'm popular?" I go, "I'm the most unpopular guy in the club right now."
Yeah.
And I said, "After you and I appeared on the cover of that magazine," I go, "Man, there's some people hating on me."
Yeah.
And we talked, and we had a very candid conversation. But apparently I didn't impress him enough, because a few weeks later he sent a hit team out here to kill me.
Oh, did he?
And they showed up here in Ventura. They had a map to my house, pictures of me. They were driving a car. One guy flew out. 2 guys flew out. One guy drove out.
How do you know all this?
Police had to come and tell me that there had been a murder attempt on my life that they had foiled. They have a moral obligation. They'll come to you, and they'll say, "We have a moral obligation to let you know this is what transpired."
When you go to that motel that Taco's at and you're going there, you know all those guys are there. There's been, whether you've been involved, not been involved.
Well, we're all involved. If you're a Hell's Angel, you're involved.
Exactly.
You're an
But
outlaw, you're involved.
in one way or the other, there have
Absolutely.
been many people who have been beaten and killed
Yeah.
because of this war between these 2 clubs. And you're rolling over there by yourself.
Right.
And there's what, 15, 20, 30 guys there,
Probably at least 18, 15.
whatever
20.
it is. When you're pulling in there, you're armed with the fact that you're going there to make peace, to be like, "Hey, man, I'm just looking at you man to man." What is that right? Like, what's your mindset going in there?
My position was, and I'm going to say something, I'm going to comment on it after this statement. My position was I was doing the right thing. And I was doing it for the benefit of the Hells Angels, the Outlaws, the outlaw community at large,
sure.
and the people around us.
Yeah.
And I also felt invincible, John. Do you ever have that feeling?
I do.
When I was young, man, I just felt invincible, and I thought nothing could stop me. And
But can I ask you about that? I mean, like, is that, I guess where I'm going is that invincibility, was that something that you just had with you all the time? Or was that in certain situations depending upon your intentionality or depending on where your heart was at?
I felt like I was invincible at all times. I'm not my ego.
Yeah, no, I get it.
The way I felt like nothing could stop me. I felt I had right on my side. And, as you get older, you learn right doesn't always win.
That's right.
But, if, you look at the history of these people that took on different cultures, different empires and whatnot. You look at Hannibal, there's no way he was going to beat the Romans, but he had to give it a try.
Would you feel that way even in the face of real violence? I mean, I know you've been involved in real violence.
Yeah,
real
I've been
violence
shot at. The clubhouse been bombed twice. And that's not the only violence. Like false charges from law enforcement, indictments. I had a 59 count state racketeering indictment once. I spent a year in solitary confinement.
But through all of that feeling of invincibility remained.
Well, no, it starts getting chipped away as you get older.
Sure.
And I don't know if you get more sensible, or if I'm 75 now. I still try to keep up with my former self, but it's not easy.
How do you do that?
Well, I get up every morning. I go walk 5 miles. I come home, try to eat right. Then I have another exercise program in the afternoon. I do my aerobic stuff on the treadmill and do a little bit of martial arts stuff and very, very light weights and stretching. And it matters. To me, that was like money in the bank for my future.
There you go.
And that's what I suggest to people. Did a lot of partying when I was younger, but I always knew the party had to come to an end. Mm-hmm. Sunday morning, the party was over for me. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of my brothers, people that are not here anymore, in fact, they're just about all gone. They didn't pace themselves, if you will.
This feeling of invincibility that you're talking about too, I would imagine, going in and putting your patch down and saying I'm out, and then the difference. I was. Can you just sort of explain?
I had been building up to it. I didn't discuss it with anybody, nobody. Absolute solo decision. My son was walking up to the door of the clubhouse. I can remember it. I said, I need to talk to you, son. And I put my arm around him, and we walked up the street. And I said, I'm hanging it up tonight. And he said,
how old was he?
Probably late 20s.
And was he a member?
Yeah, he was a member. He was a member. And I said, I'm hanging it up tonight. He goes, what? And I go, look, man. I said, I've come to terms with a lot of things. And I said, this is not the club I joined. And I said, I can't do it anymore. And I said, people aren't sharing my vision. I go, when you are a leader, you share your vision with the people behind you. And when they no longer share that vision, maybe you're not a leader anymore. And I said, it's time for me to reevaluate where I'm heading in this journey I'm on. And my mind's made up. I'm gonna hang it up. So I went in.
Where was he at with that?
He just kissed me and said, hugged me and said, okay, Dad, you know best. I know you know what you need to do for yourself. And he walked in there, and I now stood up, announced to the club what I was doing. Initially, they thought that I was stepping down as president. And I said, no, that's not what this is. I said, I'm stepping down. And I took my patch off and I folded it like a flag, and I looked around the room and I didn't see anybody I wanted to hand it to. I wanted to exclude my son. I didn't think he should be part of that decision, and I laid it on the corner of the table, and I said, if anybody's got anything to say it now. And nobody said anything. It was very sad, very emotional, and I'll tell you, the walk from my chair, I always sat in a chair against the back wall. It was the president's chair. The walk from that chair to the door, the threshold of the door to let me out, was the longest walk I ever took in my life.
What's going through your mind, your heart?
I'm just thinking, man, there's no turning back now, George. You know, you made this decision. You got to live with it. And
what does that entail? Like, what in
Well,
that moment? What did you think living with it entailed?
I thought that foolishly, I thought that I would be able to go about my business. Wasn't sure, John. About a week and a half, I got a phone call from the new president of the charter, and he said, you know, we've been doing a lot of thinking, and we've decided to change your status. You're now out bad. You can have absolutely no contact with any club members, and they can't contact you in any way. And I said, well, you know, I said, it's kind of interesting. I said, at least the government always gave me the opportunity to answer to the charges. They go, you guys aren't even going to give me the opportunity. And he basically said, that's not the way Sonny wants it. And Sonny and I had been at odds, and despite that, you know, I respected the man till the end. I didn't agree with him.
What was the crux of your disagreement?
Political decisions. I guess the biggest disagreement was Sonny felt there were two sets of rules for the entitled members, and then you had your general membership.
Can you be a little bit more specific? Like, what are those different rules? Like, what, like?
He did what he wanted. I really, John, I can't make it any more clear than that. I mean, I'm working on a new book and defining the differences in our leadership styles. It's not I'm not slinging mud at him. You know, I got a phone call. Maybe this can explain a little bit. I got a phone call the night before he died. You know, I was not allowed to have any contact with any club members, but I have had since I've been gone. People write me and call me, and I certainly keep it in confidence. I don't want to get them in trouble because it was, you know, a kick out of the club if you got caught communicating with me. And he said, the person on the other end, you know, he basically said, you recognize with this voice? And I said, yeah. And we kind of had banter back and forth. I teased him. I said, yeah, it's my rabbi. And, you know, we just went back and forth and joked. And he says, I got something to tell you. And I said, what's that? He goes, if you're going to reconcile with Ralph, that's what we, you know, close circle of friends call him. So if you're going to reconcile with Ralph, you better do it because he's not going to last much longer. And I stayed up the rest of that night and drinking coffee and thinking. And I decided against calling him because, and this was kind of a selfish decision, I figured that if I called him and we got in an argument and he passed away during the discussion, I'd get the blame for killing him.
Yeah.
So I'm being a little facetious,
No,
but
I get
there's
it.
also some truth to what I'm saying. So I decided against it, and I thought, you know, it's interesting when I did the Outlaw Chronicles, did days and days. You know what it's like to film. You know, you do it, and then they take the best stuff. And they saved the last episode, the 6th episode, you know, Sonny and myself for last. And it was really profound. The producer of that show, who I have a lot of respect for, when the day was over with, he just looked at me and he goes, you still love that guy, don't you? You respect him. And he goes, man, he goes, you could have thrashed him. And he goes, and I said, there was no reason to thrash him. I go, what he did was what he did. What I did was what I did. We were two different leaders with two different styles, but the guy's an icon, you know? I mean, Sonny Barger, man. You know, I was hearing about him in school, you know, in high school. And the guys I hung out with. I hung out with a young outlaw bike club called the Question Marks, who were endorsed by the Hells Angels. I mean, he was a living legend. There's no doubt about it.
When you're in that room and you give the guys that speech and you decide to leave the patch on the table, do you love the guys in that room?
Sure. Yeah. I dream about those guys, John. I mean, I had some profound dreams. I have profound dreams anyways. I always have my whole life. But, you know, I had dreams of the older guys that were had passed on to the other side, you know, going, I can't believe you did it, man. And then I would have young guys in the dreams coming to me, asking me questions. And I go, I can't give you the answers. I'm not in the club anymore. And, you know, I would wake up and, you know, sometimes I wake up violently, you know, very profound, intense dreams. I don't have them like I did, but I still have those dreams.
When you talk about like the '80s and being in that LA chapter and the war with the Mongols,
'70s, yeah.
Okay, then the '70s. Can you just? I know this is something. I know you don't want to do it. You know, it's something that's been sort of romanticized and people, but like what? You know, just kind of like walk me through what that was like, being in the LA
first today,
chapter.
I want to qualify it by saying this. Anybody that thinks war is romantic, whatever type of war, street war, they've never been in a war,
Exactly.
because it's not romantic. It's stressful. You don't know when it's going to come. You know, when you declare war on somebody, whether it be on a large basis, as if we're a country going into another country because we don't like their culture, whatever it may be, you know, you get into situations that you never dreamed you would be. You know, I made some. I was just a member initially when the war started, and 6 months into the war, you know, there was already 6 murders in as many months. The leader of the charter down there got murdered. It was described as an in-house cleaning by law enforcement. You know, I've written about it extensively in 2 of my books. But I became vice president. You know, I came in the middle of a conflict, and I had to try to shift the direction of what we were doing. And
What was the reason for you rising up the way that you did?
Old Man John, who was the leader, after the president that took his place, John had been the leader down there. Old Man John was kind of a legend. He was an old man when I was in my 20s, you know, and I got some pictures I'll send of you. I mean, he's a character. He had a really great picture of him with 2 pairs of glasses on. He's an old school dude. Yeah. He had regular, like, government issued glasses, and he didn't want to have them. He didn't want to spend the money to have them
bifocals.
Yeah. So what he did is he put sunglasses over his regular glasses because he didn't want to pay for the tint.
Got it.
You know, it's too much money. I'm not going to waste my money on
that,
tint. Yeah. I'll just put a pair of glasses over.
Yeah.
And I got this great picture of him looking at his motorcycle with double glasses on. And I post it sometimes on social media, and you know, people like young guys write me and they go, "Who is this guy, man?
Yeah.
He don't care what he looks like." And I go, "No, old man John didn't care about much."
Yeah.
And so, you know, I guess, you know, he mentored me, you know, and it gave me a lot of sway. And he saw something in me. You got to realize I just got out of the Marines, worked for the Department of Defense, had a structured background. And John was military, former military, World War II. And he just put me under his wing. And when the war started with the Mongols, John was very disappointed. It was very convoluted, a lot of detail to it. But in a nutshell, the war started. He wasn't happy. He stepped down.
Was there a specific?
Yeah, we were. It had been brewing between us and the Mongols. And
how so?
Well, first of all, there was a rumor on the street that the Mongols started because we wouldn't allow any Hispanics in our club, which is a complete lie. You know, David Ortega, who I met in 1966, and we were best friends till he passed away. You know, he was in the Question Marks, and he was in the Hells Angels, and, you know, he was Mexican-American, you know. Johnny Angel from Oakland, you know, he was Mexican. I could go Fat Ray, I could go on and on and on. So it wasn't true, but, you know, that vibe was there. And probably the oldest reason in the world was that one of the Hells Angels' ex-wife was now living with a Mongol. And we went to a swap meet. There was 9 of us. There was about 40 to 60 Mongols, and we met them by accident.
By accident.
And
Where was the swap meet?
it was in Santa Ana, and it was the
That's a crazy place to run into somebody.
yeah. So I think might have been the Great Western exhibit or something. So
Just all happened to be there at the same time.
same time, So
Were you there?
I was there. I got a great story too. I was there, and the member whose wife had run off with the Mongol, their eyes met, and I looked at both of them, and I knew it was on. Because I knew the history. This guy was my best friend, in the Hells Angels, and I looked at him, looked at this guy Bud, that was now living with us, and my friend just clocked this guy. You could just, what a perfect punch sounds like, just echoed in there, and it was on. We got in a circle, and they were surrounding us, and we were fighting.
Everyone's fighting, or just the two?
Everybody's,
Yeah,
everybody's fighting, man.
Yeah.
The Hells Angels and the Mongols are fighting. And Jesse, who later became my vice president in Los Angeles when I took over the club down there, and later became a Hells Angel here in Ventura, fell down. This big Mongol hit him, and he fell down. And I kind of looked out of the corner of my eye, and he had his arms spread out, and there was a motor sprocket gear there. And then motor sprockets are about this big with spikes on it and a hole in the center. He hooked it on his hand, he jumped up, and he just started hacking people. And there was blood and flesh flying and people screaming and, everybody fighting. And in the middle of all this, imagine a young, scared police officer, uniformed police officer. There was one
Santa Ana police officer.
One uniform for the whole event. This is 1976 or 77. So one uniformed officer, and he comes in, and he's got his revolver drawn. Now he's only got 6 shots. He's got a revolver, service revolver, and he's yelling at everybody, and we're all looking at each other. And this gun looks about this big, of course.
Did he put a stop to it first?
Yeah, it stopped.
Yeah.
Everybody stopped. And so when we stopped, the Mongols broke. And I'm not saying they broke and ran because they were scared, because these guys weren't scared. They stopped, they broke and ran, we broke and ran. And so everybody's getting away, And I ran out. And there was a Mongol. The fight had stopped now. And there was a Mongol. And he goes, "What the hell's going on?" He's like yelling at me. And there's like the cops started there was more cops like starting to come around. I don't know if they were outside or what. It happened so fast. And I said, "You don't know what's going on?" I'm young, and I'm a Hells Angel, and I'm in my 20s, and I think I'm cool. And I go, "You don't know what's going on?" He goes, "No, what's going on?" And I go, "This is what's going on." And I smacked him. And we started fighting. Yeah. And the cops started beating on us, both of us with the club. And the Satan slaves, who were like, I came that close to becoming a Satan slave rather than a Hell's Angel. I was so close with those guys. They got around the cop, and they said, "Don't hit that Hell's Angel." They go, "Hit the Mongol." And so the cops, for whatever reason, turned and started hitting the Mongol. Wow. The Satan slaves grabbed me, and these guys were all like 6'1", 6'2", big dudes.
Big guys, yeah.
And carried me out of there. The rest of the Hells Angels were there. There was like 6 of us on bikes. It was like 9 of us there. And we were all started laughing hysterically. Yeah. And we jumped on our bikes, kicked our bikes over, no electric starters back then. Kicked our bikes over, and we ran out of that place. Man, I felt like I was in the James gang. We just robbed a bank.
Right, laughing your ass off.
We're laughing. So we get back to the clubhouse in Glendale, and old man John's already heard about the fight. And old man John's 6'4", big hands, and he always had a cigar in his mouth. And it was always half smoked. And he always chomped on it, and he was talking, it'd bounce up and down. "What the hell's going on out there?" And he takes it out of his mouth, and we're going, "Well, John, we got in a fight, "I know you got in a goddamn fight," and he's going on and on. And, but he didn't But he was mad at, you never guess what he was mad at, John? That those guys, the Mongols had the nerve to lay a hand on us. He wasn't mad at us. We started the fight, but he wasn't mad at us. He was mad because they laid a hand on us. And so he ran in the house, comes out with a pump shotgun. He had this old Ford Mustang. I don't know what year it was. It was an old one. Faded paint, you know. It was a rag top. I remember the top being all, you know, just. And he opened the trunk up, and he's smoking on the cigar, and he throws the shotgun, and he tells who was going to become the guy that was eventually murdered, who's going to become the new Hells Angel president in Los Angeles. He goes, "You go with me." And
why did he pick him?
I don't know. I'll tell you another thing John used to tell me, and that will make a lot of sense to you. I didn't ask John because John told me one time, because you want to last in this business, quit asking questions.
There you go.
I said, okay, man.
Fair enough.
And so I didn't ask questions, but I did confront him. I said, hey, John, don't you think it'd be better to let them brew on the fight, and they'll wonder what's going to be next, and then we can petition, you know, for a sit down.
Because John's idea was just go.
John
go
just
take
balls
it
out, and he told me.
and
you know what he told me?
What?
New guy, get your ass in the clubhouse. And I went back in the clubhouse, and he took off with Ray, and you know, Jesse and I were in the clubhouse. Jesse, you know, was the guy with the motor sprocket. You know, we just sat in there all night, you know, waiting for John. Then John, we see the headlights roll in the driveway, and he had resolved it. But, you know, I felt, and I respectfully told him alone, I never questioned him in front of anybody. I said, man, I think it would have been smarter from a military standpoint to wait and let them brew on what was going to come next and then petition them. You know, John didn't care. You know, John didn't care about anything. You know, all John cared about was us. We were his family. And, you know, he was a real old school guy. You know, he'd tell you, one time he took me to a fight with another bike club. I didn't even know, you know, you didn't ask back then what we were doing. He told me to get on my bike. Get on your bike, Christie. And me, Jesse, and a couple other guys got on our bikes, and, you know, we went over to this other motorcycle club's clubhouse, and John asked for somebody, and the guy came up. John clocked him, knocked him, you know, just incredible power. Knocked the guy down, and he just, don't ever disrespect me again. And got on the bikes, and we rode off. You know, I mean, that's the kind of shit that John would do.
Right.
And, you know, I said, John, what are we going to do now? You know, and a couple of weeks later, I don't know if, I hope, and I've never really reflected on it until now, I just had this epiphany. I hope what I said to him didn't cause him to step down, because that's, I respected him, you know, wholeheartedly, and I was just giving him some input in what I thought. He stepped down. Ray took over. Within 2 weeks, you know, there was a machine gunnings on the freeway. 2 Mongols got killed. Jingles and Redbeard were machine gunned off their bikes. The frame-up motorcycle shop, tire stuffed with dynamite was taken there. It detonated, killed 2 guys. You know, it's just got brutal real quick. Can you imagine shooting machine guns in downtown L.A. and bombing businesses in downtown L.A.?
And I think there's probably this misconception, you know, to the citizens. You know, I think there's this misconception that the reason why these, you know, I know there's that thing that happened in Laughlin, or right. You know, there's that these wars are over because these are, you know, criminal enterprises. No. They're fighting over turf because they want to run guns or something. This is
egos,
literally,
man.
One guy was sleeping with another guy's ex-wife.
Yeah. You know, we talked about the Outlaws earlier. You know what that fight was about?
What'd that start?
Grease Lightning, who was an outlaw, and Sandy Alexander, who was leader of the Hells Angels in New York City, formerly both members of the Alien Motorcycle Club. They were brothers at one time. Grease Lightning came to visit Sandy. He wasn't there. Colette, Sandy's wife, said he raped her, and Sandy was a professional boxer. Grease Lightning shows back up in New York. Sandy beats him up. He goes back to the Outlaws and said, I got jumped by the whole charter. because he got beat so bad. You know, Sandy just really put it on. Well, I mean, he's a boxer, professional boxer. So two members from the East Coast go down to Florida to get an ex-member to cover his tattoo, who's down there selling narcotics and posing as a Hell's Angel. That's another whole story we could talk about. They go down there. While they're down there, the Outlaws hear they're in town, and they invite them to the clubhouse. They are told by Sandy, don't go to the clubhouse. Well, they go to the clubhouse, and one of the leaders decides they're going to take retribution for Grease Lightning, and they take them down to the rock quarry and shoot them both in the back of the head, and the Hell's Angel, ex-Hell's Angel, who was still impersonating the Hell's Angels, take them down to the rock quarry, chain them up, throw them in there, and then a few weeks later, one of the guys' club name was Riverboat, and started kind of like a little legend within the club that Riverboat came to the surface.
Wow.
And he came to the surface, and we had been calling the Outlaws, hey, what happened to these guys? And they said, we don't know, man. They were here and they left. We knew they were at their clubhouse because Sandy had talked to them and told them not to go. That fight was over a woman. So we've got two conflicts that are still ongoing to this day.
Wow.
And they're both about egos and hurt feelings and whatnot. It's not about territory. Right. People that are selling narcotics in somebody else's territory, you're not going to know they're there. They're going to come in under the stealth of darkness or whatever it may be, sell their wares, and get the hell out.
Right. Right.
It's usually
They're
about
not doing it bit brazenly in public or asking for a fight.
You want to, that's a good way to get busted.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they go into these areas in a clandestine mode. These fights were over egos and territory. Like, don't come in our territory. Not because it has anything to do with narcotics.
Right.
Don't come in our territory. And I didn't say it earlier. I wanted to allude to it earlier, but to be an effective peacemaker, you have to be willing to go to war.
Yeah, I
did learn that.
I really wanted to ask you. George, hold on. Give me just 1 second, 'cause I'm about to piss my pants. All right, give me just 1 second. I apologize.
I got all day, man.
All right, good. You need to go to the bathroom? You good? I'm sorry.
I got that jailhouse discipline, man. I don't know where you want to pick it up at. Is after Taco put the hit on me, I went to Chicago and confronted those guys at a meeting.
And what does that entail? You getting on a plane?
Yeah, I got on a plane.
By yourself?
I took one guy with me.
Who do you take with you for that?
I took Josh with me, a young guy. And
why you take Josh?
Because I figured he'd be right there. He was 25, 24, and he reminded me of myself. He thought he was invincible. And, the sad thing about Josh, he got killed later.
Sorry to hear that.
Unsolved. Which is that story. It's a story in itself. But Josh and I, after I found out, man, I was smoking, John. And you can look this up on the internet. It's United States of America versus Harry Taco Bowman, and it's got all the details of they were going to either kill Sonny or me, and they decided to kill me. And for whatever reason, I don't know, I didn't ask Taco. I did talk to Taco after the murder contract, which is also another funny story. But I'll tell you about. I don't know if I'm getting out of sync.
No, you're
here.
perfect. So you go to.
So I get on a plane. I go back to Chicago. We're gonna have a sit down with the Outlaws because we're trying to Taco's now in jail.
What year is this, roughly?
Late '90s. Taco's now in jail. He was on the FBI's, he might have been number one. He was on the top 10 most wanted fugitives. So I go back there, and
you knew he was in Chicago.
I knew that he had been picked up, and he's from Chicago. I knew that it was the Chicago Outlaws, and that Taco had ordered my murder. They had chose to kill me rather than Sonny. So I hear there's a meeting with the Outlaws back east. So I tell my charter, I'm going. Josh goes, I'm going with you, man. So we get on the plane, we go back there, and we go to the meeting, and there's Hell's Angels there, and there's Outlaws there, and we're sitting across the table from each other. And I said, I raised my hand. I said, I want to say something, and then I'm going to leave. And I'm usually very protocol, and my guys knew. They go, George is pissed about something. And so I went into it. I said, I know about the hit. I go, the police came and they told me. And I said, you know what? You do this during peace talks. You don't even call off the peace talks. And you just come after me. You're in my town with a map, pictures of me, and a silenced, equipped handgun. And I go, I want to tell you guys something now. I said, I'll respect whatever my club decides in this room today. I'll respect. But there's a point. And I said, this is what I'm telling you. I said, if you ever come back to Ventura again without an invitation, a personal invitation from me, I said, I will find out who ordered it and who participated. And I said, I will come into the house. I said, I'll kill everybody in the house, your wife, your children, your dog, your cat. And I said, on my way out, I'm going to overfeed your fish.
And what you just shared, kind of leads me into it. Just talk about a little bit. Look, I asked you if you meant it, and you said you did.
I did. Yeah.
And you said before I almost pissed my pantyhose that you said that in order to keep peace. And in
order to be an effective peacemaker,
you have to be capable of violence and willing to go there. And I believe that with all my heart. I also believe, like yourself and so many of the folks that we've talked to that have been on both sides of the law in their life, I really believe that folks that have really been down in the valley, people that are both capable of and have sort of committed some of the most heinous acts, are also capable of doing the most beautiful and godly work. They're able to lift other people.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's crazy, and we keep kind of coming back to that. Yeah. And I think there's something to the extent unless you've been down there, right, you're not going to be able to take a hand from someone to be lifted out of that unless they've been down there too.
I'll tell you something. In 2001, I got indicted on that 59-count racketeering charge, and I spent a year in isolation. And top of isolation, they put you in the hole. And I had got my chicken dinner, shoved through the slot in my cell. I never got out of my cell in the isolation unit. And I have a bridge on one side of my mouth, and they don't allow you much for hygienic stuff. And I kept a bone out of the chicken's leg. It was very long, and that long skinny bone that's kind of hooked, and I would use it to clean my bridge after my meal. I had it hidden in my room in the cell, and they came in there and shook my room down, and they found the bone. And as crazy as it sounds, they had a trial. The prison officials had a trial, and I had to go to the trial, and they set the bone. That's the evidence. They put the bone down, and they said, "Were you going to try to put somebody's eye out with this bone?" And I was laughing. I said, and I go, "No." I said, "I just to clean my bridge," And they didn't believe me, of course. And they said, "No, we think that you saved that. You were going to put one of the guards' eyes out." And I'm kind of looking at him, and there's a pencil sitting by me, and I picked the pencil up, and I go, "Now this is something I can put somebody's eye out with." And they got all pissed off. Yeah. So they said, "Okay, now we're going to sentence you to the hole." I was in isolation, but now I'm going to the hole, and we're putting you on a disciplinary diet. They don't do it anymore. Enough writs were filed where they stopped it. The disciplinary diet is they feed you in the morning and they feed you at night. You get 2 pieces of bread. You get a protein loaf, which is just enough calories to sustain you, so you don't starve to death if you're on it, for any length of time. And you get 2 glasses of water or 1 glass of water, I can't remember. And if one of the cool guards was there, he'd slip a milk into you so you could get some more protein. And because there are cool guards down there.
Of course.
You don't get no mail, you don't get no newspapers, magazines, any of that stuff, but they leave a Bible. There's a Bible in there. And so I started reading the Bible. I've read the Bible. My parents are Greek Orthodox. My mom was very religious. My mom and my aunt. I got some funny stories about my family, too, as Greeks. But I started reading the Bible, man, and, you know, that's where I had already been on this path of peace and whatnot, but there's some pretty heavy-duty stories in the Bible, you know. I revisited them all, you know, and I read the whole Bible, and I think you really get some insight into the history of violence in the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
you know, I truly mean that. You know, to be an effective peacemaker, you have to be willing to go to war.
And I imagine that it, like in most, I mean, look, whether you're talking about your Pee-wee tackle football team, whether you're talking about a unit in the Marine Corps, you're talking about a plainclothes police unit, or you're talking about a motorcycle club, you know, you get a group of men together, and whether you like it or not, everyone is sort of judged to some extent of what your willingness and your ability to engage. How aggressive?
How far will you take it?
How far will you take it? And you know, it's sort of been my experience with the different people that I've had the pleasure of getting close with, that in any organization, something Mel talks about all the time. Mel always says, you know, man, it's these 1%ers, these motorcycle guys, but it's only 1% of the 1%ers that are actually
They're
really
actually
bad.
get out there
That's
in
what
the
Mel
field.
always says. And I don't know, maybe you can back up, but everybody I've talked to, it says that Mel is actually that guy.
Yeah, sure. And you know, there was a handful of you know, people. I get people right. I have, like, there's a picture floating around the internet of me with a filthy few badge on. You know, and I'm not going to get into specifics. You know, you can use your imagination. What does it mean?
Yep.
And it was a group within the club. It was a group of
A small group of you guys that are
within the club.
And I heard that about yourself as well. And I guess what I'm asking is not like how far are you willing to take it? Is there a line you're willing to cross? But I guess you know, like when you say that one guy picked up the spigot wrench or whatever.
Right. Yeah, the motor sprocket.
Motor sprocket. Right. Sorry, I don't know shit. But like when he picked that up, I guess, can you just talk about the currency of violence in that world?
And I'll tell you the interesting thing about, and I left a portion out, not intentionally. I just, my mind, you know, I'm having a lot of fun here, and I'm trying to get as much in as I can. But when he caught up, and he ripped that across, the guy that knocked him down was waiting for him, you know, when he got up, and Jesse bounced up, and he ripped that motor sprocket across his cheek, and that guy howled. It was a primal scream.
Wow.
And I looked at Jesse. He was smiling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was willing to take it however. And, you know, you live by the sword, die by the sword. Jesse was murdered, you know, ultimately. And, you know, it's unsolved. Josh was murdered, and it remains unsolved. You know, I could go on and on and on of all these individuals.
But is that true? Like kind of across the board, as far as, you know, were there members that you felt like were adverse to violence? Were there members that you felt like deep down were scared of it? And
yeah, I think members that were scared of it.
Just like anything else.
Look, yeah, exactly.
Some guys
Joel.
wear the jacket and wear the patch, and
they're walking the walk.
That's right. That's right.
You know, but
does everybody know it? Does everybody know who those guys are?
It doesn't take long. You know, it's interesting. Big Al, who was original Filthy Few member in late 70s, the Bay Area guys got indicted for racketeering. And I don't know if you know who the U.S. attorney was on that case. It was Mueller.
Yeah, I heard that it was Mueller.
Yeah, it was Mueller. And so we always poll the jurors after the trial. And so the lawyers poll the jurors. And I don't know if you know who Tony Serra is. Tony Serra is a very famous civil rights and criminal lawyer up in the Bay Area. I've used him personally, and the guy's incredible. But, you know, they poll the jury afterwards, and they said the jurors said they didn't believe any witnesses. They didn't believe any FBI agents. They didn't believe any paid informants, and they didn't believe any Hells Angels, with the exception of Big Al. And they said, Big Al not only walks the walk, not only talks the talk, he walks the walk. And what Big Al said to him is they had pictures of letters that Big Al had been sending home. And in these letters, it said he had millions of dollars hidden, diamonds, rubies, and it was going to all be hers when he got home.
Oh, he was sending it to his lady?
Yeah, he sent it to his lady.
Yeah.
So the U.S. attorney, I don't know if it was Mueller personally, I wasn't there on this particular day, but he said, I've got a letter here, Mr. Perryman, that states, and he's showing the jury this letter about, he said, the $1 million and the rubies and the diamonds, and it's all hers.
He's probably just trying to keep his old lady.
That's what he said. He says, explain that to me. And he goes, and Albert's the most jiviest guy in the world.
Yeah.
He looks at the jury and he goes, obviously, this motherfucker never been in prison. He goes, what do you fucking think I'm going to tell her? I'm broke?
Yeah, you can't take her on date night.
And,
You know what I mean?
and the jury, man, they just go, yeah.
Yeah.
Albert, man.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
He speaks the truth.
Yeah, he speaks the truth.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. And what about like those guys? I mean, because there's also a big thing. I imagine. There's I'm not going to name any names, but there have been people. Now that the show, that this podcast show is kind of getting out there a bit. A lot of people call us to be on it.
Oh, really?
And there's a couple guys who reached out who said they're Hell's Angels and they know this and that and they were I always call Mel and Mel's like, nah, man, those guys aren't real, and
Right.
and is that a real thing? Like, I mean,
it's a shame. And when I did the Outlaw Chronicles, and I think you might have, I don't think I said it while we were talking together. I think I mentioned it when you went out. Sonny threatened to sue me. He's going to stop get an injunction and stop it. And so they vetted everything I said. And everything I said on the History Channel was vetted. But there's a lot of guys out there, talking a lot of stuff. I see stuff on social media, I don't know who these guys are,
Right.
And sometimes I get derogatory remarks made to me
Sure.
by people, my response to them is, I'm creating a historical record. This is my story. I'd rather talk about myself than have 100 years from now somebody, well, we found out George wore dresses on on Friday night,
But I guess
you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I guess it's one thing to write something down, in the safety of your home behind your computer. But are guys like rolling around with patches on? I mean, are guys rolling around with?
There are some active members. I've had no issues with them. I was in Spain for 3 years. I ran into the Hells Angels there. I partied with the Banditos and the Unknowns, another 1% club there. Like I said, I ran into the Hells Angels. They didn't disrespect me. They really didn't acknowledge me. I got a nod from one of them. And I was approached by one young member on his own. Like, I used to get up every morning, 4:30, go for a walk. In Spain, man, it's just incredible to walk those streets and those alleys and whatnot. And when you go out at 5:30 in the morning, the bars are just closing, and everybody's on the streets, and it's like a festival. And I saw this big guy coming at me, and I was thinking, okay. And, I'm always on guard. And he points at me, he goes, George Christie, right? And I said, yeah. And then he told me who he was. I'm not going to say who he was because he said some really cavalier things. He says, can I take a picture with you? I go, you think that's a good idea? And he goes, I'm from Spain. He goes, I don't take my orders from Sonny Barger. And I said, whatever you want to do, man. And, he took some pictures of me. And that, that's the way I was treated over there. Mm-hmm. And, I've seen some Ventura Hells Angels here. And, they don't acknowledge me and I don't acknowledge them. And I don't try to make myself big and get in their space, and I hope that they would show me the same respect back. But
But you're who you are.
Yeah,
You're who you are. It doesn't change.
I mean, John,
You didn't decide to go move to Kansas.
No,
you stayed right here.
I did. Yeah. And there was a rumor for a while that, I had been run out of town. That's why I went to Spain. It's kind of hard to explain for the people that started that rumor now that I'm back.
Right.
Did you guys negotiate a peace?
That is an inconvenience.
Yeah, it is an inconvenience for the story. So you need to be careful what you say to people.
Sure.
And I'm laughing at which, because you get it. You
Okay.
know? Yeah, it's like people can talk a lot of shit.
That's right. That's
but
right.
They should be ready to back it up. But,
That's right.
Look, the war in L.A. was devastating on everybody. The victims, the victims' families, the extended victims of the people who went to prison for the crimes they committed. It affected their families. People go do time in prison. To me, the real victims are the family. Like, I'm a hard ass. They sent me to Texas. I spent a year in Texas with the Banditos. I didn't suffer. My family suffered.
You mean when you were locked up?
Yeah, my family suffered.
Yeah, I get that.
And it not only, once they get you in their clutches, like you're on federal paper, you call it, like parole or probation, whatever you want to call it. They don't have parole or probation. They call it probation now, but it's essentially parole. I did the History Channel. The parole department wanted to take all my money. The money that I got for, they said, well, you can't profit off your criminal past. And I said, would you rather have me out robbing a bank? I said, there's a lot of nice branches around here. I was being a smart ass,
Yeah.
And, I got in a big dialogue with them. And I think this is important to say. I'm getting off the track again.
Okay.
But I sat in there. All they harped on was the money. They wanted to know how much money I was making. How much was I going to give to them because I had a fine imposed on me by the court. And, I said, I'm kind of ashamed of you people. I go, I'm paying for you to watch me through my taxes.
That's right.
And I say, I've been back now 4 months. I said, I think I've done wonders, man. I got a book deal. I got a TV show brewing. And you haven't asked me once how my re-entry to society is going. Do you even give a shit? All you care about is the money and what I'm doing. And is it legitimate? I said, what about the re-entry into society as an ex-convict? I'm a multiple felon. I'm almost 70 years old, and I'm a multiple felon. What the hell am I supposed to do with my life? And I'm not crying. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of obstacles out there. And I think the families, it makes it tough on the families. I'm working with a kid now, his mom and dad, I wound up trying to mentor this guy. He's in trouble. And, his biggest problem is he doesn't see himself as a criminal. He sees himself as a victim. I do consulting for lawyers. And I know a lot about strategy in courtrooms. A lot of lawyers will defer to me and talk to me. I work as a witness and whatnot for the defense. And I had a client who had embezzled a bunch of money from Sony movie. He was a director. He embezzled a bunch of money from Sony. And Sony didn't want to come after him because they were afraid the way the payroll system was set up, they could be deceived by other people. They were trying to keep it on the down low. And he called me one day, and he was almost in tears. And he said to me, just profound. I go, what's the matter, man? You really sound down. He goes, I am, George. He goes, they're treating me like a criminal. And I said, my friend, you are a criminal.
Welcome, dude.
Welcome aboard, my friend.
I'm also a little bit interested. I understand what you're talking about. about anybody who sort of romanticizes war. Anybody, you know, has never been in it, and I think that's true of violence in general. And I think, you know, when I look at, I imagine during those days when you were in LA, you know, if you're riding around, you know, when the Hells Angels ride around, I mean, it's a pretty big presence up here. So, like, you see them, you know, right. I mean, they make themselves known. Loud motorcycles and loud colors, you know.
Very
what I mean?
visual.
Very visual,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I imagine every day you're riding around during a war, there's a target on your back, and is that something that you carry with you palpably every moment when
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and this is the thing, John. I'm working on this new book, and I put, you know, we were fighting wars on two fronts in Southern California. We were fighting the Mongols, but we were fighting law enforcement
as well.
And, you know, it's like, it's one thing to go to a occupied country, you know, as long as you follow the rules somewhat, you're not going to have a problem, you know, you're not going to get court-martialed unless you do something really off the wall. But you figure you're on the street doing the same things you would do in a war zone, but, you know, you're not a hero, man. To law enforcement, to society, you're a criminal.
That's right.
And it becomes very precarious, you know.
But what was it? What was during those days in L.A.? What were some great like? What are some great memories? What are your fondest memories? What was? I mean, I imagine also there's another side to it. There's a reason why you guys. It's not an easy thing to be a part of.
Look,
right.
When I got voted in the club. Then I got voted in the club. It's December 26th.
How do you get voted in?
Well, someone brings you up. Your sponsor, my sponsor happened to be Old Man John. When he brings you up, they go around the room and they vote. And this is in my stage play. You know, we were standing around this fire. It was December 26th. It was, you know, it can get cold in Los Angeles. Not like the East, but we were standing around a 50-barrel drum, you know, wood in it, and we're staying warm. And the door opened, and everybody looked at the door, and the old man stepped out, you know, filled the door. You know, all of a sudden the door was black because, you know, and, you know, I still remember it to this day. Christie, get your ass in here. And I ran. I looked at everybody like, you know, maybe this is it, you know. And I ran in there, and I got in there, and the room, everybody was against the walls. The Hells Angels in there, and they were all measuring me, watching me. And so John, you know, said to me, well, are you ready? And, you know, I couldn't even get the words out. You know, I was like shaking my head, and he finally said, well, say something. You know, and I go, yeah, John, I'm ready. And he goes, you know what this means, right? And I said, yeah, I know what it means. And John, he says, you don't know nothing. And he goes, we're your new family. And he goes, we come first. You understand that, don't you? And I said, yes. And I looked around the room, and just everybody was standing there. And John looked at Tall Paul. We had two guys in Los Angeles, Small Paul and Tall Paul. Everybody's got handles, you know. Yeah. And Tall Paul, who wasn't really tall.
Taller.
Yeah, he was taller than Small Paul. Yeah. He took his patch and he folded it up, and he threw it at me, and I caught it. And I opened it up, and I outstretched my arms, and I looked at it, and it looked like that death head, the emblem on the back, was staring at me, and he was measuring me up, just like the guys against the walls were. And I looked at it, and Old Man John said, well, he goes, put it on. And I put it on, and there was a mirror, like window effect from the window. You know how you look in a window, and it's not a mirror, but you can see your reflection. And I had an experience like 1955 when I saw the first outlaw biker I ever saw on a street corner. And I looked at myself, I saw that outlaw biker, and then I looked and I saw John, and then I saw myself. And I turned around, and I was like, my eyes were like misting up, and I looked at John, and he was standing there staring at me, and I just was drawn to him. And I opened my arms up, and I went to run and embrace him. And he punched me in the chest. And he goes, "What's wrong with you?" He goes, "Never let your guard down. You're a Hell's Angel now." And that was my baptism, into the club. And I just was like, yeah, never let your guard down. But I'm a Hell's Angel now. Yeah. Nothing can harm me. Now, later that night, we got on our motorcycles and we rode out to Betty. Now, do you know who Betty is? Betty's this little old woman out in San Bernardino, Purdue, it's called in the outlaw culture, who handmade the patches. Wow. So we go out to Betty's. Betty's this old religious woman, and strict orders we get there. No smoking and no cussing. Betty's going to put my patch on my Levi, and she's in there sewing it, and I'm just like, not only am I Hell's Angel now, but Betty's sewing my patch on that she made on my Levi vest. Wow. And
she does all the patches.
She did all the, well, not anymore. Back then, she's probably not even alive anymore. But she did all the patches, and you couldn't get a patch. There was one specific person that could order the patches for everybody, and if anybody else tried, it was bullshit. But those are the rules. So we get the patch, and I try it on, man. And I'm, you can imagine how I'm feeling, John. And I look at Betty, and she says, "And remember, no hot rodding until you reach the end of the street." And so we jumped on our bikes, man. And, that was the fastest trip from San Bernardino to L.A. We went back to the Glendale Clubhouse. I partied for a few days. And shortly after that, it was New Year's. It was December 26th. We rode to Oakland. And I went up there, and my old longtime friend Animal, Paul Hibbets, who was an Oakland Hell's Angel now, and if you've ever seen Gimme Shelter, mm-hmm. He's the guy with the headdress, fox headdress on.
Altamont?
Yeah, and he's the guy that knocked out Marty Ballin, the singer.
From what's that? From
Jefferson Airplane. Yeah.
You see the guy who stabbed the guy up at Altamont?
That's Alan Pizarro, stabbed Meredith Hunter. But Meredith, I'm actually working with these people, these two young girls in the Bay Area whose their families are connected to Altamont somehow through the bands. They want to do a thing, and if it gets off the ground, those are somebody you might want to talk to. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't realize that Alan stabbed Meredith after Meredith pointed the gun at the stage. Now,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a gun.
Oh, yeah. He pointed the gun at the stage.
And they were specifically hired. You guys were specifically hired to security for Rolling Stones? Or?
Yeah, but Rock Scully, the Grateful Dead manager, who I was good friends with, it just turned into just a mess. Like the Grateful Dead came there, they saw what was happening. Jerry.
I've seen that interview. Jerry's like, "Man, there's like people getting stabbed out there, man."
Yeah, Jerry.
All right, you want to go play?
Yeah, like Jerry. He's in our movie Hell's Angels Forever. He goes, "These guys, they're violent in all the correct spaces." I don't know. He said something to that effect. But Jerry was the coolest dude.
So you hung out with those guys?
Yeah, they were good friends of mine. Yeah, Rock Scully used to call me, and he'd say, "Hey, Jerry's flying in. He don't trust anybody but you. Would you pick him up personally?" I'd go down there and pick him up at the airport. Now this is in the 70s. Jerry's getting off the plane with a briefcase full of dope.
Yeah.
And, there's no guards. He gets down off the plane and then, comes out and, I go, "What's up, Garcia?" He goes, "Oh, man, get me out of here. There's deadheads everywhere." And he's telling me, I said, "Look, I got a car. You just have to know Jerry." I knew you had to call him.
So you go pick up Jerry Garcia at the airport.
Yeah.
Are you in your colors?
I got my colors on, yeah.
And you go pick him up?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's party time, man.
Yeah.
And so I go, "I got a nice car for you. I got a Cadillac out here." And he goes, "Okay, cool, man." He goes, "Just get me to the car, George." He goes, "There are deadheads everywhere. There were, the dead would follow him around."
Yeah.
And so we get in the car, and he's going, "Oh, God damn it, man." He goes, "Don't make eye contact, George. Don't make eye contact." And so we get going, and he goes, you got to pull into a 7-Eleven. Remember 7-Eleven?
Sure, yeah.
He goes, you got to pull into a 7-Eleven. He goes, we got to spray paint the windows black. I go, Jerry, you can't spray paint the windows. I go, this is a rent-a-car, man. I go, you're with me, man. I go, relax. Everything's cool, you know? And he goes, oh, man, I'm not feeling cool. And I go, do you want to change cars? He goes, yeah. So we go to my house up in Oakview, and I got this long driveway.
Up in Oakview here?
Yeah, up here in Oakview. So I got this long driveway. So
Jerry Garcia was here?
Yeah, at my pad.
Shit.
So we pull down in the back.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I don't know, man. He says, okay, I feel better. And I go, come here, let me show you something. So I have a van that was the support vehicle for the Hells Angels. It's got a big motor in it, but it's really plain looking. But inside, it's like a motel room, you know, for the kids and the wife. So he gets in there and he goes, oh, man. Now, you remember the big old phones this was a house phone, but it was a big block phone that AT&T had, and you could go outside with it if you didn't go too far.
Yeah.
So he goes, can you get Scully on the phone? Rock Scully, the manager. And I go, yeah. So I get Scully on the phone. I go, hey, Scully, it's George. And he goes, everything okay? And I go, yeah, Jerry wants to talk to you, man. So I hand Jerry the phone. He goes, Scully. He goes, you know, I've been down here 1 hour. George has given me everything I need. You're fucking fired. And then, of course, he was joking, you know. And so that's the kind of relationship I had with those guys. They would send me tickets, like to fly to a concert, to come and see him. You know, I hadn't seen him for a while. You know, I also promoted Jerry Garcia. I was the first person to promote the Jerry Garcia band.
Wow.
In Southern California.
Wow.
And you know, me and Bill Graham finally wound up co-promoting.
But I mean, there's this relationship between the. I mean, I remember. I know Willie Nelson a little bit, and I remember, you know, when I was just the biggest fan, and I'd go up to San Francisco. My wife was a travel nurse up there, and we when she was my girlfriend, she broke up with me because I was a real piece of shit, you know, before that.
Before you got straightened out.
Exactly, and you know, man, it was awful. She was a nurse up there, and she had a boyfriend, and oh my God, but I would go up there all the time, like leave flowers on her car and like draw these little stupid pictures and poems and shit.
The romantic side.
Yeah, man, and she wouldn't even talk to me. It was awful, but I got these tickets through this agent to Willie Nelson, and we got backstage, and I like rolled Willie this giant joint, and I wrote him this letter. I'm trying to get this lady back so bad, and but I remember like we this guy invited us over to the bus, but it was all Hell's Angels. Like the whole front row was, and I mean this was 2007. It was all Hell's Angels, and then there was this. One Hell's Angel with like long white hair, and he
LG.
was like, LG. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. But like talk a little bit about that, about the relationship between the
I'll tell you a great Willie Nelson story. This is back in the 70s, maybe early 80s, and probably about 15 of us show up at the Universal. I think it's an amphitheater.
Okay.
It's either that or the Greek Theater. I think it was a Universal amphitheater.
Okay.
And so the security guy, I go there and I go, yeah, we're here for the show, and he goes, name, and well, we never gave names. I mean, our backstage pass was our patch, basically.
Right. That's right.
And I said, well, we're not on the list, man. I go, you know, we're here, though. You know, and he goes, well, I'm not letting you in. I go, what do you mean you're not letting us in? I go, we go to all Willie's shows. I go, LG's security. I go, come on, man. And I go, okay, no problem. And just about that time, Willie walks up, and he goes, what's the problem? I go, he won't let us in. He goes, well, fuck it, man. We won't do the show. And he turns around, and we all turn around with him and start walking back. And the guy goes, no, Mr. Nelson, my mistake. And, you know, that's the kind of guy Willie was. And, you know, Waylon was that way, Willie, Johnny Paycheck. I locked Johnny Paycheck in a room one time. He was so fucked up. I had to sober him up before he went and performed. And he was so mad at me. And he gets to the show, and he thinks he's going on that night. And he goes, oh, George, it's good to see you, brother. And he's all this shit. And, you know, he's going like, where's the shit? You know. And I go, there ain't no shit. Yeah. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, you got to sober up, man. You got to put a hell of a show on for Toys for Tots. Yeah. You know, you got to do the show Saturday. He goes, Saturday? It's only Thursday. You know. He goes, what am I supposed to do in the meantime? I said, sober up. And so I locked him in the room. I left. He's yelling at me. I left two Hell's Angels in there with him, big old Hell's Angels. And so went on the show, did the show Saturday, thanked me. He didn't say thank you for locking me
And
in
you're
the
doing
room.
that because you want the show to go, or you're
I'm doing it for the show, for the kids,
for the
man.
kids.
Toys for Tots.
Yeah.
People in Santa Barbara were counting on him at the
Yep.
Arlington Theater.
Yep.
So he, after that, every time I'd see him, he'd go, "You son of a bitch, you gonna lock me in a room?" I go, "I might, Johnny." I go, "Behave yourself." So, I mean, and we had relationships. Waylon, Willie, just, Chris Christopherson. I met Johnny Cash, man, through Willie. And only time I was ever lost for words, John. I mean, there was the Man in Black, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And he goes, he's from up here.
Yeah, man.
And he saw the Ventura on me, and he looked, and he goes, "Ventura, huh?" He goes, "I spent a little time in Ventura." And I go, "I know you did, And I just let him talk. I just wanted to hear what he had to say.
What do you think that's about, the relationship between...
These guys were outlaws, and so were
right.
we, man. These guys were outlaws, I mean...
And really the Grateful Dead, too. I don't think people realize that.
Outlaws,
it's like they think it's like these hippies, like, that's outlaw shit, man.
Well, I'll tell you a great story about when they went to sober. They did an intervention on Jerry. You want to hear this story?
Love to.
So Bob Seidman is a famous rock photographer. If you look him up, you don't know his name, but you know his works.
Okay.
If you look at the Blind Faith album cover with the girl with the no top on holding the airplane, I don't know if you remember that one.
Sure.
Bob Seidman took that photograph. And, year after year, it's always in the top 100 albums of all time. So they sent Bob up for the intervention. So Bob arrives on Friday, the intervention's Sunday. So it was, Jerry, this is Bob telling me the story. "Jerry, I'm here, man, let's party." So they're fucking doing heroin, LSD, weed, opium. They're doing this whole gig. So Sunday at 4, there's a knock on the door, and it's the band, Bob Weir and, Mickey Hart. And it's an intervention, man. Jerry that's the farthest thing from his mind because him and Bob had been partying all weekend. Yeah. And they did an intervention, and, they said Jerry's the most sweetest guy on the earth, but he was motherfucking Seidman, "You dirty motherfucker," he was taking him out of the party.
Yeah.
And they took him to the rehab place, and he got sober. Mm-hmm. And I remember when he died, I was in Sturgis, man. Mm-hmm. And I took it real hard.
I bet.
He was just. I remember taking him to Santa Barbara one time. We were talking about Billy Idol, and he was. It's interesting. A lot of these guys become such big icons, they kind of lose touch. They can't go out. They become prisoners of of their own.
I know exactly what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They become prisoners of their own celebrity. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yeah, Billy Idol was up here a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about different things." And he goes, "Yeah, what's he like, man?" He goes, "I really like his music." I go, "He's cool, man." And I go, "The girls are throwing their panties on the stage, Jerry." And he goes, "Wow." He goes, "Imagine if they did that for me." It's just an off the wall statement.
Wow.
And I mean, just the mind of Jerry Garcia.
Yeah.
And there's a interview of me. I was a guest disc jockey on a radio show in Ventura, and I did an hour interview of Garcia, and it was pre-taped, but there's an hour interview floating around somewhere of me and Garcia, and I can't find it. I'm getting ready to go through all my archives. I got so much shit, John. I'm going to go through all my archives, and I've got these. I got these tapes of all these informants like taping me, like in the discovery motion. Mm-hmm. And I think somewhere in those tapes,
is that Jerry Garcia?
Jerry Garcia tape. I got to go through it all.
Talk a little bit, George, just about this place. This place means a lot to me and my family, and I know it has quite a reputation here.
The Dare Lodge, man. It's, watched it change hands, but not change mission statement, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, in 1977, 78, I started pressing on Jon. And look, things were so bad in L.A. You couldn't go anywhere
Because of the war.
because of the war. So I went to Jon, and I said, Jon, I said, I just want you to hear me out. I said, I don't want you to think ill of me for this. I said, we need to make a tactical retreat. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, look, you're former military, I'm a Marine, Department of Defense. I go, I think we need to move out of this area. I said, Ventura's just waiting for us, man. I go, it's wide open. There's 7 bike clubs up there. I go, we go up there and hold court and straighten everything out. We can make the perfect Hell's Angel environment for ourselves.
What makes a perfect Hell's Angel environment?
Whatever we say goes. I mean, I'm just being honest.
No friction.
Yeah, it's just, say what you mean and mean what you say. And a lot of people wouldn't agree with that in other bike clubs, law enforcement, and even some of the community fathers. But, I had a vision for this place, of it being a safe place, a beautiful place to ride your look at this place for riding motorcycles, man. Yeah. So I say to Jon, so I bring Animal in on it. And my idea is, the Satan slaves have been talking about becoming Hell's Angels for years. So my idea is the Satan slaves become Hell's Angels. Simultaneously, we move to Ventura. The people investigating us for all the stuff that went on down there suddenly don't realize we moved to Ventura, because law enforcement didn't communicate back then. They didn't share anything, Jon.
Ventura County's a whole different world.
Yeah. And I said, we go up to Ventura. We start fresh. I said, it'll take them 10 years to figure it out. And it did. And they did figure it out. Wow. And their indictments came later. But that's a whole different story. So got Satan Slaves, Animal, got the Oakland Heavyweights, Sonny, Fu Griffin, different people to endorse the Satan Slaves, patching over to Hell's Angels. So Jon and I come up with this idea. We're going to have a run at Wheeler's Gorge. And we're going to introduce Hell's Angels Ventura, Hell's Angels at large, to Ventura County. And
so you guys all go meet at Wheeler's Gorge?
Wheeler's Gorge. We had this big run at Wheeler's Gorge.
Wheeler's Gorge is like a big fucking waterfall. I mean,
we just went up there and partied, man. For the weekend, the cops were going crazy.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was just incredible. This was 1977. I think I have a poster in my pictures or something. I'll send this shit to you. I'll text you and send them to you. You'll love to see them, man. But so that's how Ventura County got introduced to, about 300 California Hells Angels coming here and partying, and everybody just swarmed this place, And you know what? I think they liked us. Mm-hmm. Here I am, 40, 50 years later. I don't know how long it's been. 1977, we're going into 2023.
And what about this place specifically?
Well, I mentioned when I got here, Beverly and I came and saw Bill Callahan here last week. I mean, incredible lyrics, incredible performance. I've been coming here. They had the house band. They used to have this band called Studebaker that just kicked ass. Then you had the Bombers. Later, that was a band, big local. These are local bands. Now you got Charman, who's Beverly's grandson's the bass player for Charman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we were just up here, a week ago?
Was this a Hell's Angels?
Yeah, this was one of our bars.
Yeah,
and you
I heard like right there, there's a safe down there. I mean, that's sort of what the rumor is. Like right there, that's a safe where you guys used to keep stuff.
Well, it's a tunnel.
Oh, it's a tunnel?
No, it's
there's 16 Mongols down there.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't go down there, Jon.
Yeah, exactly.
What we do? We'll get Gahaler over and we'll open the vault.
There you go. Stuff his ass in it.
Oh, my house. One of the informants told law enforcement he was trading information to get out of his problem, and along with the information, he was getting money and whatnot. And so I don't know where he pulled it. He said there was a body buried in my house in Oakville. And when I got back from prison in Texas, I wanted to go by there and reminisce. And they flattened the whole house. They took out the pool, all the structures, dug up the land looking for the body.
Wow.
And needless to say, there was no body there. But this is, people, you get in the courtroom and the prosecutors, they say, well, you've got to make a deal with the devil to get these kind of guys, and they truly are making a deal with the devil because these guys have no morals, no ethics. They're not doing this because they've got religion or they've had an epiphany that they want to do the right thing for society. These guys are doing this because they got themselves in a jam and they want to get out of it. They want to extract themselves from their own judicial problems, and they want money in the process.
You're talking about guys who
informants.
Yeah.
I've had a
and for a while there, when you left and you went into bad standing, were people trying to accuse you that that's what you were doing?
Yeah, they accused me of being an informant. My response to them was, well, if I was an informant, don't you think all the high echelon guys would be locked up right now? And I go, has anybody got in trouble?
Plus, you're still right here.
Yeah,
you're right here. You're not running from anybody.
No, I won't run from anybody. And whether that's good or bad or indifferent, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, and I'm not challenging anybody. But I got nothing to hide. I didn't do anything wrong. I was offered a lot of money, John, by the government to become a witness. They said their exact words were, "We know, where the bodies are buried. You name, what do you want?" This was in 2011 when I got arrested, and they had a tape recorder on the table, and they said, "There's a murder contract. Make a deal with us, and we'll push play, and you can hear who's conspiring against you in your own club." And I looked at him and I said, you know what? I'll take my chances on the street because I know how those guys operate. They're very duplicit. They have their own agenda. And when they're done with you, they're done with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And your code's your code.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I lived on this street by the codes of the street, and that's how I want to go out. And, I write these books. I don't compromise anybody in what I say, and I am going to say a few things in this new book. But the players are dead. They can't indict them. And I'll tell you, historically in the criminal world, when somebody dies, they wind up taking the heat for everybody. Oh, he did everything. I didn't do anything. Right. Is the standard saying. So, I didn't compromise anybody on Outlaw Chronicles. I didn't compromise anybody on my stage play.
What's the biggest misconception about the Hells Angels or the outlaw biker world?
Well, I think there's, the dirty clothes is, something that left ages ago, decades ago. Sharing our women, never saw that happening. I mean, certainly provocative women in the club, but, not anybody's wife or girlfriend. And I'm not saying anything bad about those provocative women.
No, God
they
bless
were
them.
Who they are. Never compromise anybody. I don't want anybody to get in trouble for me. And I'll tell you, Guy, I mentioned Guy earlier, Castellone, he was the president of San Diego, probably one of the fiercest guys I've ever met. No nonsense. As a leader, he led from the front, and I just was writing about him last week, so he's on my mind. But went to prison for machine gunning Jingles and Redbeard off their bikes on the freeway.
He was the one who did it?
Yeah, he's the one that did it. Went and did the time for it. And he, till the very end, I was told, he died of cancer here a couple of years ago. He would stand up in the meetings anytime anybody said anything derogatory about me. And he goes, when are you guys going to wake up? He goes, we'd all be in jail if he was doing that stuff. He goes, what's wrong with you, man? And he goes, you know where he's at. He's not hiding. I know where he's at. And he goes, let's stop this bullshit. And, a member that communicated with me after he called me and told me a guy died. And he just said, I want you to know. He goes, Guy backed you till the end. Yeah. And I said, yeah, and I think about him often. Gorgeous Guy was his name. Good-looking Italian guy,
we started off the conversation, you guys were talking about kids, and I'm just wondering, can you just talk to me a little bit about fatherhood, and we mentioned, one of your daughters represented you. I'm interested in how that felt. What was it like to raise kids in that world? You said, your son was a member.
Right.
I'm just
Very
interested
complex. It's a delicate balancing act, and I'll tell you, I'm very open-minded. I like my children, as I like the women in my life, to be their own person. To blossom and to follow their own path. My daughter, I'll tell you an example. When the war was going on with the Mongols, my first wife, Cheryl, my high school sweetheart, who Beverly was good friends with as well, was getting on me. She goes, this club thing is taking over your life. You spend no time with us. I read about all this stuff in the newspapers. I hear about it on the radio, TV. You won't talk about it. She goes, who are we now? And so I wanted to show her who I was. I wanted to spend some time with them, and just the Hell's Angel lifestyle. So I go down. I always drove a real low key type vehicle. I still do to this day, but I actually don't have a vehicle this day. When I left Spain, I'd been driving Spain for 3 years, and I kind of liked coming back, starting over. But anyways, I'm getting off track. So I took the kids to Santa Monica, took them to the pier on the carousel, and all that stuff. And on the way home, I was driving with the family, and some guy cut me off once, cut me off again, gave me the finger, and I'm just biting my tongue, John. You can imagine I'm in my 20s. I'm in the midst of this war. I want to spend a nice, quiet day with the family, and give you some insight into my daughter and my relationship with my daughter. The guy cut me off, slammed his brakes on. There was a car in front of him, and then he turned around and he gave me the finger. That's it. I can't take it no more. So I jumped out of the car. He rolled the window up, and he's giving me the finger still, but he made an error. He forgot to lock the door. So I opened the door, I pull him out at a 45-degree angle, give him a couple of head slams, and work him over. And, I get back in the car, and, now my wife, Cheryl's just like looking at me fuming, Georgie, he doesn't know what's going on. He's a little kid. And there's Mariah, like this looking at me I'm driving, I'm looking at the mirror. She just won't take her eyes off me. It's been 15, 20 minutes. And I'm looking at her, and then she finally breaks a little smile, and I was like, I get it, Dad, So she understands me, and, it's interesting. She graduated from law school. She was the youngest graduate ever in past the California bar. She was 22. Wow. The feds immediately, ATF specifically, were trying to figure out a way. They went to the bar association and were trying to hold back her license. They go, you can't give this girl a license. Her dad is so and so. And they said, to their benefit, they said, well, we're not going to punish her for his sins. She's her own person, and she just started in this career of criminal defense. She was going to be a doctor initially. She's at the University of Puget Sound, and she calls me up. This is after I got found not guilty in my murder trial in 1987. She's getting ready to go to college, and she calls me up, and she says, hey, Dad, how would you feel about me coming home? And I go, well, shit, you're always welcome home. I go, what's going on? Are you having problems in school? She goes, no. She goes, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. And she goes, I think I want to be a defense attorney. And I said, the defense attorney? She goes, yeah. She goes, I don't like what they did to our family.
Wow.
And she came home and went to law school and graduated, like I said, at 22, passed the bar. She's worked with some of the best lawyers around. And we'll go back on Taco now. Taco had been in prison about 5 years. He was doing life, racketeering. He was doing life. And he was also doing 10 years for ordering my murder. So he had the life sentence. Then he had the 10-year racketeering sentence. And he called my daughter. And he goes, called me, excuse me. He called me and said, you know, your daughter's doing unbelievable things, I hear. He goes, you're still on the street after a 59-count indictment? And he goes, how would you feel about her assisting my attorney?
Yeah.
And I said, who's your attorney? And he told me, Henry Gonzalez, I think out of Florida, a very well-known attorney. And I thought about it for a minute. I said, you know what, Taco, why not? And I said, but I got to ask you a question before you get off the phone. He goes, okay. And I said, look, I know you got a racketeering life sentence. And I said, I know you got 10 years for that hit on me. I go, what are you going to do first? The 10 or the life? And he goes, fuck you. I said, good talking to you, Taco.
Yeah.
But so, you know, I mean, she really created a niche for herself. George Christie III was a Hell's Angel. He was my vice president for a while. You know, he got voted in on the same day I got voted in. Our anniversaries were together. You know, he was in the club over a decade. He left the club because of how they treated me. And when I say he left the club, he's not the only one that left the club. I can name off about 15 guys, rapid session at concession, that decided if this is how they're going to treat George after 35 years, 40 years, I don't want any part of it. But he, great kid, you know. It was interesting. He had to follow in his sister's footsteps. His sister was a straight A student, you know, shy of a genius, maybe a genius. And why can't you be like your sister?
I get that.
Constantly got that.
Sure.
You know? And he had a learning disability, and it was tough on him. He somehow had lung problems, and he was 39. I talked to him on the phone. He had the flu, he thought. What he had was pneumonia. And he went to sleep and never woke up. His lungs shut down George. In his sleep. And I talk about him in my stage play. I had a dream about him after he died, and very profound dream. And I wrote it into the play. It's part of the final act. And I miss him. It's interesting. Beverly was talking about we've known each other since we were 12, and we've been friends. Our families were friends. I was best friends with her husband of 56 years. He just died a few years ago, and our sons were friends, best friends. And her son died as well at 39. Wow. So we belong to a club that no parent should have to belong to.
That's right.
You don't want to bury your children. I have a transgender child. I've never talked about it publicly, so you're getting the scoop here, John. And I'm an old school guy. If I'm going to insult you, you're going to know it.
That's right.
But I do. Sometimes I misgender his friends. And probably one of the most incredible artists at age 10, I had to take the lights out of their bathroom because they were in their, they would get epiphanies to do these art projects. And the only way I could stop him was to take the light out of the bathroom so he couldn't turn the light on and work. I'd get up at 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd hear something, and they would be in the bathroom, and they did claymation. I have a claymation they did probably age 10 or 11 of someone being led to solitary confinement and the doors shut. Just the art that they draw is just incredible. In fact, they are so good. The producers for Outlaw Chronicles used them in the graphic
Wow.
design for the show. They actually went. They said to me, "We're going to get somebody to do this," and I said, "Well, I think I have somebody for you." And on their own merit, they got the job, and flew back with me, and did a lot of the graphics in Outlaw Chronicles.
And how old? How old is he?
Just going to turn 30.
Turned 30.
This year will turn 30. And I don't know. I'm going to say this, and maybe I'll put my foot in my mouth. This is to parents. Just a minute. This is to parents with a transgender child. You think you're going through problems? Imagine what that child's going through. And the biggest hurt for me was having to say goodbye to my daughter and then reintroducing ourselves as my son. And I don't know if that sounds corny.
Not one bit.
I hope I don't offend anybody from that community. I love Aubrey, incredible person, And now we'll get to my youngest, Finn, the rocket scientist who takes after my uncle. And, he's autistic. He didn't speak till he was 5. He's somehow come out of it. Talk about a master negotiator. He doesn't like to be around a lot of people, so he created this. He went to Chaparral School up here and petitioned them to give him a spot there, and he explained his situation. He didn't like to be around a lot of people. Things come in very fast for him with his autism, and they said, "No, we can't help you." Well, next day I got a phone call. They said, "This is Mr. Christie," and I said, "Yeah." They said, "Could you send your son Finn over? We want to talk to him." So he went back over there, negotiated himself a spot in that school. During the course of that, he built his first computer. I think he was 14 at the time when he built his computer. And then he got interested in physics and problems. And he created this problem, and he asked me to take a look at it. I'll tell you, John, I had no idea what. I mean, it's this. I'll send you a picture of it. It's like this problem.
Might as well send me. I won't know.
Yeah, and so they thought possibly he was making this stuff up, that it didn't have any, wasn't anything. It was just numbers that he was putting together.
Symbols.
They sent it to somebody local up here, and I got a phone call from this, mathematician. They said, "Who taught him this?" And I said, "Taught him what?" And they go, "Who taught him how to do these mathematics?" And I go, "He taught himself on the computer. He started researching it." He goes, he's a mathematician. He goes, "Where does this stuff come from?" I said, "You have to ask him." I said, "I don't even know what he's doing." I would come in the house, and there would be problems on the mirrors, on the windows with grease pen.
Wow.
He'd be doing all these things on the grease board. And I went to one of his problems, and I erased one of the numbers, and like a kid, I did a dicky bird. I know what a dicky bird is. He comes out, and he said to me, I'm in the front room, and he comes out, and he goes, "Did you do this?" And I go, "Guilty." And he goes, "You need to grow up, man." And I said, "Hey, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told your mom. I ain't ever growing up."
Yeah, there you go.
Those are my kids in a nutshell. I love them all. They're all unique.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, they're all from a different decade.
Yeah,
And they're just like, you got kids, man.
Yeah,
they're
I
just
know.
like little humans, man.
That's right, man.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
I don't know, John. Life is strange, man. And I figure, pick a set of morals, pick a destination, paint a vision. Don't be afraid to revise it from time to time, but follow it, man. Because if you're not, you're full of shit. That's the bottom line, I guess. I don't know, you know. And some people would argue with me. I've been accused of being full of shit, but here I am.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mean that from an egotistical standpoint. I mean that from a humble standpoint.
I get it.
You know, I've made a lot of mistakes, but every mistake I've made, I've learned from, and I haven't repeated. You know, or at least tried not to repeat them.
There you go.
And I think Ojai. You know, we talked about this place earlier. Ojai, has you ever checked out the Pink Moment?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. You know, this
Yeah.
it's amazing, you know. The Chumash were up here, and we should take a lesson from them, you know. And
What's the lesson we should take?
let nature work its course, man. You know, and follow the little voice inside you. Because I think the little voice, unless you're crazy, you know, the little voice is leading you the right way to go.
That's right.
You know, and you know, sometimes it's a struggle. You know, you want to tell them to shut up.
Yeah, there you go.
You should listen to them.
That's
Right.
That's why you tell them to shut up. You know?
Yeah, because you don't want to hear what they're saying.
You know what I mean?
Because you know they're right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Thanks, man. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
You have anything? You have anything else for me, or
Yeah,
we
I
always
want
just
to
do
thank you.
Oh, come on, man.
And you know, I've been around a lot of celebrity people, and I love it when people stay humble.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, you're a good man.
Yeah, right back at you, man. It's a real honor for me. And
Okay, thank
does
you,
anybody else have anything for George?
So this is the stage hook?
What's that?
The
No.
stage hook?
No. And
No, I'm teasing you, man.
No, I know it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's John, Bam Bam the dog. First, on behalf of both of us and everybody from the Real Ones team, I just want to sincerely thank you guys for tuning in. The folks that I bring on the show, they're family to me, and being able to tell their stories and bringing you into their world is something I'm just super proud of, and again, grateful that you guys tune in. We've decided we want to take things just a step further. It's a Patreon community. And basically what that means is if you become a part of this community, look, I already bored Bam Bam. If you want to become a part of this community, you're going to be able to hear episodes early and all that, ad-free and all that good stuff. But there's all this behind-the-scenes footage, all this stuff that we've shot that really brings you into the folks that we've had on the show, really brings you into their world. Live chats with me and the folks that I bring on the show to talk about their world, talk about the issues that they're dealing with, about their triumphs and their tragedies. Just go to Patreon/Real Ones on this website that you see right there, right on the screen, that's right in front of you. This whole idea was something about building bridges and bringing people together and bringing folks that often don't get the mic and giving the mic to them. So the fact that you guys tune in means the world. Anyways, again, thank you. Be good to each other out there. Rock and roll. I'm gonna get a workout in a little bit with my man Eric Linden, stunt coordinator from The Punisher. He's coming all the way up because we're about to get after it. And when that's done, he asked me in the car, are you gonna have my shake ready? And I know what that means. Am I gonna have my Sun Warrior shake? They've got the active protein, but they also have this collagen protein, which is amazing. They also have the Warrior blend, which is a little bit lighter if you're trying to cut. And I believe in it. I believe in that Sun Warrior stuff. Go to www.sunwarrior.com/real ones.